Good evening. The news gang is here. Tonight, the near return of Sonko, but not so fast. A new BBI bench. This time, the wise men and women are 7. Also on the show, can't make it, won't make it. The IBC boundaries bombshell. Plus, the pre-season transfer window. Are the new signings on loan or are they on a permanent transfer? On the punchline, the political party is on, but who cares? The taxes and the public thieves and their apartments on the kicker. Yvonne is blowing the whistle on whistleblowers. The memo is on blood, and on the angle tonight, a science celebration.
We come to the irresistible conclusion that the impeachment of Sonko fully complied with the Constitution and the statutory requirements. We therefore find that the 2 petitions lack merit and are hereby dismissed. With respect to the issue of costs, we find that the appropriate orders is to direct each party to meet on costs.
All right, so the sign language gangster is Njoki Shege, and what you were listening to there and watching, that was just a little bit of what happened in the court today. Yvonne, Sonko says he's going to appeal, but a very interesting decision there by the courts after a long silence when everybody thought nothing was really happening, and then all kinds of rumors coming yesterday about this particular case. And today, basically, the judge is saying that Anne Kananu was properly installed as a deputy governor, which basically puts her in pole position to be sworn in as governor.
It certainly does. It was a double blow today at the courts for the former governor of Nairobi County. So both upholding the nomination, vetting and swearing in of the deputy governor, but also upholding his impeachment. So that, you know, just dealing a double blow with those cases that were consolidated into one. But what I found interesting was what the judges seem to be saying, calling out what they may have termed, in not so many words, mischief by the governor in the manner in which he conducted himself in trying to stop Anne Kananu's vetting after nominating her, in taking so long. I think it was, 2 years since January 2018 that Nairobi had no deputy governor since Polycarp Igathe left, citing trust issues between him and his boss. But there was also something the presiding judge, Said Chitembwe, said, and he said, you know, the manner in which a governor needs to conduct himself with dignity and comportment, and those are some of the issues. So they really did tear into the governor, how he conducted himself, the manner in which he tried to stop Anne Kananu's swearing in as deputy governor. But yes, he is going to appeal, but we have seen how these things can happen very quickly. In this country, that efficiency, if you recall, in fact, Anne Kananu's swearing in was quite efficient. There were 2 cases that were actually, against her swearing in. Those were dispensed with at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then the County Assembly of Nairobi went on within a matter of hours to, vet her. About 2 or 1 to 2 hours to vet her. And then, the swearing in happened really quickly. So we've seen how fast things can happen in this country. So could we see her being now sworn in as governor and then, rendering Sonko's appeal out of time, overtaken by events, is what we'll hope to we will see.
Superfluous, they call it. But Linus, I noticed something interesting, that this wasn't like a really one of my friends used to call them deep jurisprudential unveiling. There was nothing like that. I mean, it was just basic logic. There's no way that you take the MCAs to Mombasa and they're the same ones who are supposed to be voting here, and then you complain you were not given a chance. So it was really just very small little things that anybody, who is not a lawyer, could just see. So they essentially appeared to have seen through a lot of things that they saw as mischief, really, as Yvonne was saying, by the governor.
You're right. There isn't sound jurisprudence that came out of this ruling. It was more of a housekeeping affair. Basically, an arbitration of a case of sandpit bullies, basically. Nothing that will inform the law going forward. And what for me really comes out is judges may have decided to basically follow the easier route. Because if these Nairobi affairs were really subjected to a thorough analysis, there are absurdities all over the place, including, for me, the question whether indeed Article 182 was followed to the letter in terms of Kananu's rise to the office of governor. We are told all the time that the law doesn't apply retroactively.
Yeah.
I mean, even the way you read the Constitution and the way it's written, it's supposed to be followed that way. If a vacancy occurs, as per 182.2, then it triggers that the deputy governor shall assume office. But then Nairobi, strictly speaking, did not have a deputy governor at the time of Sonko's impeachment. There was no deputy governor sitting in any office in Nairobi. What happened was somehow there was this joint headhunting for whatever papers there were out there. And one was found dated 6th of January 2020, where Sonko had proposed the name of Kananu to the county assembly. But there was no formal vetting process that had taken place in the county of Nairobi. So how is that different from picking any other candidate out there? Because if you're not gone through the vetting process, then you're just a name, basically, just a proposed name. And so a speaker sits, and then we start reading the article backwards. Then go fix the previous article. Get the person nominated to be county deputy governor to be vetted and then sworn in. I don't remember clearly, was Anne Kananu sworn in as deputy governor or
yes,
deputy governor?
Then she's sworn in as deputy governor.
Which then made her acting governor for a moment.
Yes. Look, all this, I would call them absurdities, really. And I think what the court did today and the judges did in brief is, we also belong to this town. The absurdities, both ends.
Choosing between the lesser evil.
This is the lesser evil.
Yeah, because quite frankly, I mean, one would have expected, because this touched on very fundamental constitutional questions. I mean, especially when you're talking about the timing of when Anne Kananu was nominated and then what was prevailing by the time that Sonko was actually impeached. The objective situation at that point was that there was actually no deputy governor who would then automatically ascend to that office, and they did the right thing at the time, because the constitution anticipates that when the deputy governor is not there, then there is a speaker, in which case the speaker only holds, then there is an election. It's not the same automatic sort of ascension like the deputy governor. So one would have expected that in the face of such a serious legal conundrum, that there would be a little bit of jurisprudential sort of trailblazing that we would see. That now, if something like this happens, say in Turkana or in Nyandarua, whichever other county, that this is actually what we would do under those circumstances. But this one, I'm not even too sure that if anything like this happened in my county of Siaya, that we would know that, we can rely on the precedent that came out of this particular case. It was really more like, you stole my chicken. No, actually I was just passing, and it sounded like that to me.
I looked at it more from a point of view of who's smarter now. Why? Because here is Sonko, who, with all the mischief, and I mean, what he was doing was obvious. Failing to nominate a deputy for all that long was to avoid one thing: a situation where he would be impeached and the deputy would take over. Yeah. So the very guillotine he was trying to run away from is the very guillotine that
he fell on his own sword, basically.
So basically he fell on his own sword. And secondly, the import of lack of a deputy governor and his impeachment as well would have resulted in a by-election. Yeah. And that is what, I mean, the powers that be were trying to avoid by all means, no by-election. Because it would have triggered a very different political game plan altogether. So here is a scenario where Sonko had nominated Kananu, and I thought the thinking then was this nomination would not go anywhere. In any case, how many people knew her? She was the chief officer as at that time. And you remember there was a time he nominated Miguna. There was a time about a nomination of Agnes Kagure or something like that.
Yes.
There was all manner of games being
list,
played, you know.
remember?
And the idea was, don't nominate a deputy to avoid impeachment. But here you are, when the matter got to where it got as a result of his arguments with the national government over establishment of NMS, it got to a point where I think they had realized that there was a secret card. He had nominated somebody that probably he didn't put too much thought into, and that card was,
fished out.
And used.
Against
So now, don't be surprised if any time from tomorrow, Anne Kananu is sworn in as the governor of Nairobi, and she ends up also at the same time nominating somebody to be deputy. And that nomination fast-tracked by the county assembly, such that there is no vacuum in that position, as it were. And don't even be surprised if he goes to the Court of Appeal. The matter will probably drag on, go to the Supreme Court, drag on. By that time, we will be heading to a general election. So even if he was to be reinstated, it will be too little, too late. And then secondly, what I found the judges telling the governor is that his mischief was also his downfall. You remember ferrying 57 or thereabout MCAs to Kwale? And the game that was played there was take away the MCAs, deny the House the requisite quorum. An odd trick in the book. But unfortunately, I think he had forgotten that the standing orders in the county assembly had been changed to facilitate or to allow for a virtue sitting. So these guys that you took to Kwale physically ended up voting virtually. And of course it comes.
But it also acted against his own case, where he was saying that he was not furnished with the evidence and was not given a chance to defend himself and that sort of thing. And so he was being told, one, of course, first, that the fact that he sent a lawyer there with bundles of things that probably looked like evidence meant that he knew there was a certain case he was to answer. But more interestingly, he was being told that, hey, you took all these people out there with the sole intention of defeating the whole voting process in the county assembly, and therefore you cannot then claim now that the numbers were not sufficient and the people are not allowed to vote, yet you are actually the same person who had shipped, or is it ferried, some of
when you talk about that, I remember some of the wordings that the judges used today about the mischief. And they talked about that his conduct warranted his removal from office. That was what was said by Justice Chitembwe, Wilfreda Okwanya, and Weldon Korir, who actually ruled unanimously. And they say they did not find any external hand in the impeachment of Sonko, as he had claimed. But then now they say that they did not see his conduct to having met the highest standard expected of a governor. In fact, they faulted him for alleging that he was intoxicated when he signed the deed of transfer, because they said the deed of transfer is supposed to be such an important document that it cannot have been seen to have been dealt in circumstances where he was not sure of. So they threw that out completely. And then they're saying he violated the trust that had been bestowed upon him by the office which he held of governor. But then now, when I look at that and look at what the promises he made to the people, I think when he was sworn in 2017, and he said he was going to fix the city, he was going to give Nairobians what they wanted. In fact, I'm trying to look for the exact wording. He promised to guarantee efficient and timely services for all residents. That was on 21st of August 2017. But what did we see after that? There were sackings, resignings of some of the city officials who were supposed to work with him. There were complaints about how the city was. I keep remembering the Sonko that we saw after he became a member of parliament, after winning a by-election, then becoming a senator soon after that, then winning the governorship in 2017, I think with the third highest votes cast in the country after the president and Raila Odinga at the time. I think he had over 800,000 people who voted for him, expecting him to do so much more. He even had the president's ear. Remember what happened? Was it in Balozi when there was demolition of buildings, and he called the president on the speaker and put him on speaker and said, Rais, wanavunja hapa. With nani? Akasema Ministry of Agriculture. Immediately it was stopped until whatever matter was there was heard. So that was his climb to grace. And then his fall was also spectacular. yeah, after everything that happened.
That very phone played a key role.
And then now he has all these cases. He has a 357 million shillings case. The other day I was listening to the EACC saying he was among 3 governors who had amassed almost 11 billion shillings in ways that cannot be explained. And in fact, it was him, his predecessor, and the former Kiambu governor, and the governor of Samburu, Moses Leon Kulal. So he has all these things that are following him, other than now this impeachment case that he seems to have now lost. So Sonko, masaibu yake ni mengi.
Masaibu ni mengi. I think we need to leave it there, because after all the courts are not really done with this matter, so how can we be done with it? So I think we can move on to something that is just as interesting, if not more. Wafula Chebukati speaking not too long ago about boundaries. I think we have that soundbite.
So are you trying to tell Kenyans that there's no way we can have new constituencies in place before we conduct August 2022 elections?
Where we have reached, Mr. Chairman, even if we are to calculate and say, for example, Mr. Chairman, we are to do boundaries delimitation, how long will it take? And whether within 1 year we can be able to complete the same and use the report for the purpose of general election. I don't see it feasible that we'll be able to do boundaries now and complete it and use the same in the general election.
Kasarani, I was given an example, Kasarani at 398,000, the second most populous constituency, which is Ruiru at 371, Mbakasi East at 363, etc. Like 5 of them, 7 above 250. Chair, what we're telling these people is that before 2027, they have no hope for equitable representation.
All we are saying as a commission is this, that should the law change, then we shall try as much as possible and comply with the law. Now, that is as far as that matter is concerned. And I think I would not want to tell the country that we shall do this or we shall manage this within the limited time. But we are a creature of the law. Let's wait and cross the bridge when we get there.
A very interesting session there with the Senate. I think Hassan Marjan, the acting CEO, said, I think, what it is. Then Wafula Chebukati, the chairman, must have realized the political import of this. So he kind of tried to walk back a little bit on that, saying, well, we can't quite say, we will try our best if the law is changed and all of that. But the bottom line for this, Francis, is that whichever way you look at it, this is going to be very tight for the IEBC to do any kind of boundaries delimitation with or without BBI.
I looked at the presentation they made before the Senate Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and there were some certain dates that the Commission was presenting insofar as the question of preparedness for next year's general election is concerned. Actually, the sitting had been called to respond to a series of questions about the state of preparedness for IEBC as the country heads to a general election. It's about 410 days to that poll. And so they were being asked, what is your level of preparedness? And you remember a week ago, the Commission launched a strategic plan up to 2024. And the Commission was saying that the last date of conducting the boundaries delimitation is 2024. Oh, yeah. And the Commission saying, looking at the timings that we have now, it would be almost impossible to conduct the boundaries delimitation. And remember, at the heart of the BBI process is the question of equitable representation and equitable distribution of resources. And that question of equitable representation has been one of the selling points. Remember the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling mantra in the Mount Kenya region and other areas? And the creation of the 70 new constituencies as proposed by the Constitution Amendment Bill in the schedule was such that there was also a proposal to suspend Article 89.4 of the Constitution, such that if BBI was to pass, then it would require IEBC to distribute these new 70 constituencies before the country heads to the general election. Then it would also mean that there would be questions that would be raised if the constituencies were not ready by the time the country goes to an election. And that being the case, and the questions that we had people raise, what was the criteria used to distribute the 70 constituencies to 28 counties as opposed to the 47 counties, some counties claiming they were left out. There were mathematics that were given there in terms of what is the requisite size of a constituency. 133,000 people.
They now increased it now.
Yeah, plus or minus.
For urban and,
for urban and rural,
areas,
constituencies. So if you were to proceed to establish the 70 new constituencies, what will it require? First, it will require that the Court of Appeal dispenses with the BBI appeals, the consolidated appeals. Most certainly, whichever way it goes, somebody will go to the Supreme Court. If you look at the timings, from 29th of June to about 2nd of July.
Yeah.
Give it 1 month, 1.5 months for the 7 judges to prepare a judgment. That takes you to about August, mid-August, let's say end of August.
Right.
Then if somebody goes to the Supreme Court, you're talking about September and probably October. So the earliest you can be done with this is maybe end of October or November at the earliest. IEBC has 90 days within which to conduct a referendum. They can say, give us this period to prepare. So let's say we have a referendum by June, by February, March next year. What period do you have to create the new constituencies? And remember, boundaries delimitation is a very emotive issue. There's some people, let's say in Kiambu County, which is supposed to get about 6 constituencies, Nairobi, which is supposed to get about 12 constituencies. There's some people who will raise questions, why this constituency going to this area as opposed to this area? And those people can easily go to the court. So it presents a challenge. Actually, I would think the biggest challenge for BBI at this point are 2 challenges. 1, time. 2, COVID-19.
Wow, interesting. Linus, you are flipping through.
I'm flipping through the Constitution because I think the Constitution would be a big focal point in the upcoming court case where BBI now moves to the Court of Appeal, and the bench was named today. Let me start with the bench and say, obviously, people will be looking at this bench and saying, how will it decide? And you'll see analysis of people talking of pro and anti, system and anti-system. That is how these judges will be profiled way before they even start the court case. And I mean, it's a Kenyan context, and this profiling sometimes comes with or without information about those judges. And so I feel it for them, the 7 of them. What tonight Kenyans are doing is they look at them, they say, Justice Musinga, how would he rule? Justice Okwengu, where would you head? Justice Kiage. You know, the kind of profiling that we know goes on in this country. That's number 1. Number 2 is the weight of expectation. And no one other than the former Chief Justice Mutunga himself raised the level of expectations about the Court of Appeal when he actually hit very hard at the Court of Appeal and said that Court of Appeal has not been a very good defender of the Constitution. And so this will be a test case. And when we look at the matter that will be discussed by these 7 judges, the ruling made by the 5 judges in the High Court, these were matters that are of very deep implications on the Constitution. What the 5 judges in the High Court succeeded to do, they succeeded to stay off politics in terms of writing a ruling and a decision that is today quite a point of discussion in various forums, especially among the Commonwealth countries that share jurisprudence. So the Court of Appeal judges are up against a lot of substance when it comes to constitutional questions. If it was as easy as the Nairobi issue, which is straight politics, and you know the players, I mean, some of them are not even worth the strict interpretation of some of these articles. But when you look at the matter at hand, the petitioners in the BBI case framed it as a defense of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And what this does is it pests all the judges, whether in the High Court, Court of Appeal, or Supreme Court, onto the defensive, because they are saying it is about this document. It's not about the politics, it's about this document.
And it literally forces them to engage with the constitutional questions and not all these other things that people usually bring.
Absolutely, and so many of them were raised, and what we expect to see when the hearing begins next week is how the constitutional questions will be put across. One last point on just the approach by the pro-BBI proponents. Heavy politics, an approach that is too heavy on politics, I'm not sure that will be very useful when it comes to this case. They, and we hope to see their teams, legal teams, also addressing themselves to the constitutional matters of substance in there, not the politics. Politics did not deliver BBI in the High Court, and politics may not deliver BBI in the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court.
I think we need to take a break. I mean, a very interesting place to leave it for now, because well, that is the case. Politics really is still at the heart of BBI. BBI itself is very
amending the Constitution is a political process. Yeah?
But let's take that break, and then we'll come back with the rest of the conversation. Plus, we'll also be talking about that intra-Jubilee transfer window.
Woman you fell in love with. Two strangers in love. Or are they?
I love you.
Is that why you insist on destroying me? And a family with a lie to protect at all cost.
They threatened to kill my entire family. He knows that we're planning something. I told you to stop him.
Does love stand a chance?
I'll take them to prison with me.
Empire of Lies. Tonight's episode is already on Viusasa. Watch it now and get the story ahead of everybody else.